I'll finally turn my luck around. I smiled. 2 hours later, I was banned from the casino for life. My name is William. I'm a construction foreman with calloused hands and a 9-year-old who still hugs me every morning. 3 months ago, I had a plan. Tonight, I had $847 and a stack of hospital bills that might as well have been written in a foreign language. My daughter beat cancer, but the debt was eating us alive. I went in with basic strategy and iron discipline. I'd done this before. Small wins, careful play, walk away ahead. But desperation has its own math. The cards felt different when rent money was on the line. Wins made me bold. Losses made me desperate. I told my wife I was working late. I told my brother I needed emergency cash for a water heater. I told myself I was saving my family. 2 hours. That's all it took to cross a line I didn't know existed. When a careful man with everything to lose keeps saying, just one more hand, what breaks first, his luck or his life? I spread the hospital bills across our kitchen table like I was dealing cards. Same routine every Tuesday morning. Sort by amount due, smallest to largest. Pretend the numbers might change if I shuffled them enough. The biggest one sat on top, for $1,847.23 for Lily's 3-day stay in February when her white blood cell count dropped. The insurance covered 60%. They said it like that was good news. Sarah moved around the kitchen getting ready for work, her scrubs making that soft swishing sound against her legs. She poured coffee into her travel mug without looking at the table. We'd stopped talking about the bills weeks ago. What was there to say? We owed $23,000 to people who sent letters with polite language that meant business. Double shift again? I asked. Triple if they'll let me. She kissed my forehead, tasting like toothpaste and exhaustion. Lily's lunch money is on the counter. The front door clicked shut. I counted the bills again, 17 separate pieces of paper, each one a reminder that my daughter almost died and we couldn't afford it. The automated payment reminder started ringing before Sarah's car pulled out of the driveway. This is a courtesy call for William Prescott. Your account is past due. I hung up and opened my phone's banking app, $847.63 in checking. The mortgage payment was $1,200, due yesterday. The electric bill was $180, due Friday, with a cheerful yellow notice promising disconnection. I did the math on my calculator app, then did it again, hoping the numbers would cooperate this time. They didn't. Last month, I'd won $340 at the Riverside Casino. Basic strategy, careful play, walked away when I hit my target. It felt like the first good news we'd had since Lily's remission. Sarah didn't know about it. I'd used the money to pay the phone bill and buy groceries. Told her my boss gave out unexpected bonuses. Not exactly a lie. More like creative accounting. My foreman's number was already in my recent calls. Hey, Jerry. William. Listen, I need to work late tonight on the Morrison job. Foundation's looking rough, and I want to get ahead of any problems. Overtime's approved, Jerry said. You sound tired, man. Everything okay? Yeah, just trying to stay busy. Through the kitchen window, I watched Mrs. Henderson walk her dog past our house. 3 months behind on the mortgage, and she probably knew it. The whole neighborhood probably knew it. I folded the bills back into their neat stack and left them on the table where Sarah would see them when she got home at midnight. My work boots sat by the front door, steel toes scuffed from 20 years of construction sites. I'd been laying foundation since I was 14, long enough to know when something was about to crumble. The Morrison job was solid. It was everything else that felt unstable. I grabbed my keys from the dresser and checked my wallet. For 20s and 3 singles. Enough to get started. Dad, I don't get it. Lily sat at the kitchen table where the hospital bills had been that morning. Her math homework spread out like a puzzle she couldn't solve. Division problems, long ones with remainders that didn't come out clean. She chewed her pencil eraser and looked at me with those serious eyes she'd inherited from her mother. Show me what you're stuck on. She pointed to problem number 7, 847 divided by 23. I sat down next to her and smelled the strawberry shampoo Sarah used for Lily's hair. 8 months since her last chemo treatment, and her hair was finally growing back thick and brown. Okay, so 23 goes into 84 how many times? 3. Good. What's 3 times 23? She wrote it out on her scratch paper. 69. So what's left over? 15. She carried the 7 down. 157. We worked through it step by step, the same way I'd taught her to tie her shoes and ride her bike. Patient repetition until the pattern made sense. Division had rules. Follow them, and you got the right answer every time. Hannah's family is moving, she said while erasing a mistake. Yeah? Where to? An apartment. Her mom said they can't afford their house anymore. Lily looked up at me. Are we going to move? No, sweetheart. We're staying right here. Promise. I helped her fix the remainder on problem 8. Promise. She finished her homework while I made dinner. Mac and cheese from a box, the kind with the powdered cheese that never mixed quite right. Sarah was working a double shift at the nursing home. Wouldn't be home until after 11. These quiet evenings with just me and Lily used to feel normal. Now they felt borrowed. My science fair project is due next month, Lily said, twirling noodles around her fork. I want to do crystals. You know, how they grow when you add salt to water. That sounds perfect. Will you help me? Of course. She told me about her day, reading group, playground drama, a test she was nervous about. Normal 9-year-old problems that had simple solutions. I listened and asked questions and tucked her into bed at 8:30, reading 3 chapters of Charlotte's Web until her breathing got slow and evened an eye in the kitchen. I loaded the dishwasher and wiped down the table. Sarah had left a note by the coffee maker. Called in for extra shifts this week. We'll figure it out. Love you. We'd figure it out. That had become our family motto since Lily got sick. Medical bills? We'll figure it out. Mortgage payments? We'll figure it out. The gap between what we earned and what we owed kept growing. But we kept saying we'd figure it out like the words themselves had power. I checked on Lily one more time. She was sleeping on her side, one arm wrapped around the stuffed elephant she'd had since she was 3. The night light cast shadows on the wall, and for a moment the room looked exactly like it had before the diagnosis, before the treatments, before everything changed. My car keys were on the dresser where I'd left them. My wallet was in my back pocket. Jerry expected me to work late on the Morrison job, and Sarah wouldn't be home for hours. Just this once, I told myself. Just enough to cover the electric bill. The casino was 20 minutes away through suburban streets I knew by heart. Past the elementary school where Lily would present her crystal project. Past the grocery store where we bought generic cereal and waited for coupons. Past the bank that had already turned down our loan application twice. I'd driven this route maybe a dozen times since Lily got sick. Started as stress relief, $20 at the slots, enough to buy myself 2 hours where the only thing that mattered was the next spin. But 20 became 40, and monthly became bi-weekly, and stress relief became something I didn't have a name for yet. At the red light by Maple Street, I reviewed basic strategy in my head. Hit on 12 against dealers 2 or 3. Double down on 11 unless dealer shows ace. Split aces and 8s, never split 10s. I'd learned it from a library book during Lily's hospital stays, memorized it like multiplication tables. Math didn't lie. Follow the rules and the odds were almost even. Tonight felt different though. Sharp in a way that made my hands steady on the steering wheel. I had $200 in my wallet and a plan. Start small, quit at $600 profit. That would cover the electric bill, groceries for the week, and gas to get to work. Simple math. The casino's neon sign reflected off my windshield as I pulled into the parking lot. I parked next to a silver Buick with a world's greatest grandpa bumper sticker and a rosary hanging from the rearview mirror. Other people had their own reasons for being here on a Tuesday night. Other people had their own bills to pay. The security guard at the entrance recognized me. Evening, Mr. Prescott. How's the little one? Getting stronger every day. Thanks for asking. Good to hear. The casino doors slid open and the familiar sounds washed over me. Slot machines chiming, cards shuffling, the low murmur of conversation that never quite stopped. The air conditioning hit my face like a gentle slap, carrying the smell of cigarettes and carpet cleaner and something else I couldn't name. Hope, maybe. Or desperation. They probably smelled the same. I walked past the penny slots where elderly couples sat side by side, sharing drinks and pointing at spinning reels. Past the poker room where serious men in baseball caps calculated odds and probabilities. Past the sports book where guys my age watched basketball games and clutched betting slips like lottery tickets. The blackjack tables were in the back corner, away from the noise and lights. Table minimums ranged from $5 to $50. I found my usual spot, table 7, $15 minimum, where Jenny Rodriguez dealt Tuesday nights. She looked up when I approached and smiled the kind of smile that meant she remembered my name. William, good to see you. How's Lily doing? Made honor roll again. That's wonderful. Smart kid takes after her dad. I pulled out 200s and set them on the felt. Chips, please. Jenny counted out the bills with practiced efficiency and slid me a stack of red chips. Starting us off right tonight. Two other players sat at the table. An elderly man in a cardigan who introduced himself as Frank, and a quiet woman in hospital scrubs who nodded politely but didn't offer her name. Regular Tuesday night crowd. People with day jobs and mortgages and reasons to be here that made sense to them. Good luck tonight, Frank said as Jenny shuffled the cards. I got a feeling this might be your night. I arranged my chips in neat stacks of 5 and waited for the deal. Through the casino's sound system, soft jazz played at a volume designed not to distract from the games. The clock on the wall read 9:15. Sarah wouldn't be home until after 11. Lily was asleep, dreaming about crystal formations and science fair ribbons. Time to work. Jenny dealt the first hand with smooth, practiced motions. My cards came face up, 10 of hearts, 6 of clubs. 16 against her showing queen. The worst possible hand in blackjack. I looked at my chips, then at the cards, then at Jenny's patient smile. Basic strategy said hit. I tapped the felt twice and watched Jenny flip my third card, .5 of spades. 21. Winner, Jenny announced, sliding 3 red chips across the felt. Frank laughed and clapped his hands once. Told you this might be your night. I stacked the new chips with the others and waited for the next deal. The rhythm felt right. The cards felt right. For the first time in months, something was finally going my way. Jenny Rodriguez had been dealing Tuesday nights for 8 years. She knew the regulars by name, asked about their families, and remembered who drank coffee black versus cream and sugar. When she dealt, the table felt like someone's kitchen instead of a casino floor. How's the construction business? She asked, sliding cards across the green felt. Steady work. Can't complain. I arranged my chips. 4 stacks now, up $85 in 30 minutes. Lily wants to be an engineer when she grows up. Says she wants to build bridges. Smart girl. Takes after her dad. Frank, the elderly man in the cardigan, won his hand with 19 against the dealer's 18. My grandson plays Little League, he said, stacking his chips. Kid can't hit a curveball to save his life, but he keeps swinging. The woman in scrubs, her name tag said Teresa, played quietly at third base. She was up about $50, betting the minimum, playing basic strategy like she'd memorized it from the same book I had. Hospital workers knew about odds, about things going wrong despite following all the rules. Dealer change in 10 minutes. Jenny announced that I checked my phone. 10:47 p.m. Sarah would text when she got home from her shift, probably around midnight. Lily was asleep, safe in her bed with her stuffed elephant and dreams about growing crystals for the science fair. My chip stack had grown to $285 profit. Close to my target, but not quite there. Basic strategy was working exactly like the book said it would. Win some, lose some, but win slightly more over time if you followed the math. Jenny dealt another round. I got dealt 20, king and queen of hearts. She showed a 6. The book said stand, let the dealer bust. Frank doubled down on his 11 and pulled a 9 for 20. Teresa hit her 12 and got a 7 for 19. Jenny flipped her whole card. 5 of clubs. 11 total. She pulled the next card slowly. The way dealers do when they know everyone's watching. 10 of spades. 21. Sorry, folks, Jenny said, collecting our chips with practiced sympathy. Frank shrugged and reloaded for the next hand. Teresa checked her watch and sighed. I calculated my losses, $45 in one hand, back down to $240 profit. Still ahead, still in control. New dealer coming in, Jenny announced. Mike's good people. Take care of yourselves. She gathered her tiptoes and headed for her break. Mike Sullivan took her place. Younger guy, faster dealing style, less conversation. The rhythm of the table shifted from kitchen to business. Welcome to the table, Mike said, shuffling cards with quick, efficient motions. What's the action tonight? I looked at my chips, then at the clock. 40 minutes until Sarah got home. Plenty of time to hit my $600 target and get out ahead for once. Let's keep it rolling, I said. Mike dealt faster than Jenny. Cards hit the felt with sharp snaps. Chips moved in quick bursts, and the table's pace picked up like someone had shifted into higher gear. I liked it. The speed felt efficient, professional than my first hand under Mike's deal was blackjack, ace of spades, jack of clubs. Natural 21 paid 3-2, turning my $25 bet into $62.50. Frank whistled appreciatively. Now we're cooking, he said. 3 hands later, I hit another blackjack. Then a 20 that beat Mike's 19. Then a successful double down on 11 that pulled a 10 for 21. The chips kept coming, red pieces of plastic that represented groceries and electric bills and breathing room. My stack grew to $385 profit. Then $420. Then $465. You're on fire tonight, Frank said. Wish some of that luck would rub off on me. Teresa cashed out at $485, counting her small stack of red chips twice before walking away. Good luck, you too, she said. Know when to quit. I should have listened to her. Should have followed her example and walked away with a decent win. But I was so close to my $600 target, and the cards felt warm in my hands like they were on my side for once. Mike shuffled a fresh deck. The clock read 11:31 p.m. Sarah would be getting off work soon, driving home through empty streets, probably stopping for gas and wondering why the bedroom light was still on. How much longer are you planning to play? Frank asked. Just a few more hands. Want to reach a number? We all got numbers, Frank said. Mine changes every time I get close to it. I ignored him and bet $30 on the next hand. Got dealt 19 against Mike's, showing 8. Solid hand, good odds. Mike flipped his whole card, Jack of Hearts for 18. Another winner. My profit hit $515. Then $540 on the next hand. Then $585 when Mike busted with 23. I was $15 away from my target. 3 more minimum bets, maybe 4 if I got unlucky. The math was simple, clean, almost guaranteed. You sure you don't want to cash out? Frank asked. That's a nice night's work right there. Just 3 more hands, I said. Then I'm done. Famous last words, though I didn't know it yet. Mike dealt the cards with the same quick efficiency, but something felt different this time. The cards seemed heavier. The felt looked darker under the casino's lights. I bet $25 and got dealt 16 against Mike's showing 10. The worst possible hand again, just like my first hand of the night. But this time, basic strategy felt wrong. This time, my instincts said stand. I tapped the felt anyway. Hit me, king of clubs. 26. Bust. Sorry, Mike said, collecting my chips. Just one bad hand. Still up $560. Still ahead of my target if I counted carefully. I bet 25 again and lost. Then again and lost again. 15 minutes later, I was down to $340 profit, and Frank was putting on his cardigan. Think I'll call it a night, he said. Good luck, William. I barely heard him leave. The cards went cold like someone had flipped a switch. Not slowly. Not with the gradual decline you could ride out if you stayed calm and stuck to basic strategy. They went cold all at once, with the brutal efficiency of a machine breaking down. I lost 6 straight hands. Doubled down on 11 against dealer's 6 and pulled a 3 for 14. Mike flipped his whole card, queen for 16, then pulled a 5 for 21. Split aces and got dealt 2 10s for 20 and 21. Mike had blackjack. My careful profit disappeared in 45 minutes. The $585 I'd built over 2 hours evaporated like steam off hot coffee. By midnight, I was down to $340 profit, then $285, then $190. Rough stretch, Mike said, dealing another hand. Cards'll turn around. I wanted to believe him. Had to believe him. This was just variance, the natural swing that every gambling book warned about. Basic strategy was mathematically sound over the long term. I was still following the rules. The deck just needed time to correct itself. My phone buzzed. Text from Sarah, home safe. Long day. Going to bed. Love you. I typed back, still working. Home soon. Another lie. They were getting easier. Mike dealt me 14 against his showing king. Basic strategy said hit. I tapped the felt and got a 9. 23. Bust. Down to $140 profit now. The electric bill was $180. I needed at least that much to make this whole trip worthwhile. I bumped my bet to $50. Still conservative, still within reason. Lost that hand too. Then the next one. The casino floor around me buzzed with late-night energy. Slot machines chimed and flashed. Other blackjack tables hummed with conversation and the click of chips. But my table felt isolated, like we were playing in a bubble where normal rules didn't apply. You okay? Mike asked. Want to take a break? Get some coffee. I'm fine. Just having a rough patch. They happen to everyone. Cards don't have memory. I knew that. Had read it in every gambling book I'd ever picked up. Each hand was independent, mathematically separate from every other hand. Past results didn't influence future outcomes. But knowing something and feeling it were different things entirely. My profit was down to $85. Then $40. Then $15. The clock on the wall read 12:47 a.m. Sarah was home, probably asleep, trusting that I was working late to help us catch up on bills. Instead, I was about to lose the money we needed to keep the lights on. I needed more chips. The ATM stood in the corner by the casino sports bar, humming quietly under fluorescent lights that made everyone look pale and tired. I'd walked past it a dozen times tonight, but never stopped. Now I stood in front of the screen, hands shaking just enough to make typing my PIN difficult. Other people moved around me, some celebrating small wins, others looking as hollow as I probably did. A couple shared a bucket of coins from the penny slots, counting their winnings in nickels and dimes. An older woman fed $20 bills into a video poker machine with mechanical precision that I pulled out my debit card and slid it into the slot. The machine took longer than usual to read it, making clicking sounds like it was deciding whether to cooperate. Finally, the menu appeared, checking account balance, $547.63. Rent money. The mortgage payment that was already 3 days late. Money Sarah thought we still had because I hadn't told her about tonight's plan. I selected $300 withdrawal, enough to get back to even. Maybe even ahead if the cards turned around. The machine counted out 15 $20 bills with the slow deliberation of a dealer shuffling cards. I folded them carefully and put them in my wallet, trying not to think about what $300 represented. 2 weeks of groceries. Lily's lunch money for the rest of the school year. Gas to get to work until my next paycheck. Walking back to Mike's table, I passed the penny slots where the elderly couple was still playing. They'd been here when I arrived 4 hours ago, feeding coins into the same machine, holding hands between spins. They looked happy, content, like they were playing with money they could afford to lose. I envied them. Welcome back, Mike said. Ready to turn this around? That's the plan. I converted the 300 into chips, 12 red 25s and 10 white ones. Fresh ammunition for a comeback that felt more necessary than possible. My phone showed 2 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. Probably the hospital, calling about another bill that had slipped past due. The casino's sound system played soft jazz that was supposed to be soothing but felt ominous instead. Other players at other tables laughed and clinked glasses and celebrated small victories. My table felt like a different world entirely. Same minimum. Mike asked, let's try 25 this time. I was still following basic strategy, still playing by the book, but $25 felt like the right bet size to recover what I'd lost. Aggressive enough to matter, conservative enough to last if things went wrong again. Mike dealt the cards with his usual efficiency. I got 13 against his showing 7. Hit and got an 8 for 21. A winner, finally. There we go, Mike said, sliding chips across the felt. Told you they'd turn around. I won the next hand too, then lost 3 in a row. The swings were getting wider, more violent. Up 50, down 75, up 25, down 100. The careful, grinding profits I'd built early in the night felt like ancient history. My stack dwindled to $180. Then $120. Then $75. I was alone at the table now. Mike dealt to an empty chair and made small talk to fill the silence. But his voice sounded far away, like he was speaking through water. I needed to think. Needed to step back and evaluate my position like any other construction problem. But thinking required stopping, and stopping meant facing what I'd already lost. Better to keep playing. Better to trust the math. With Frank gone and Teresa long departed, the table felt different. Bigger somehow. The empty chairs stretched out on either side of me like witnesses to something that shouldn't be happening. Mike dealt to my single spot with practiced efficiency, but even he seemed quieter now. Busy night for you, I said, trying to make conversation. Tuesdays usually are. People getting ready for the week, you know? Working off stress. I bet $50 on the next hand, my biggest bet of the night. Got dealt 20 against Mike's, showing 9. Should have been a winner. Mike flipped his whole card. Ace. 20. Push. No winner, no loser. Chips stayed where they were. Close 1. Mike said. I bet 50 again. This time I got 18 against his 10. He flipped a 6 for 16, then pulled a 5 for 21. Another loss. My stack was down to $85. The electric bill was $180. Even if I won every hand from here out, I'd need to more than double up just to cover what we owed. The math was getting impossible. Maybe take a break, Mike suggested gently. Get some coffee? Walk around a bit. I'm okay. Just having a rough patch. They happen. Cards don't have memory, but sometimes it feels like they do. He was being kind. Professional, but kind. Probably saw guys like me every week. Decent people who started with reasonable plans and ended up betting rent money at 2 in the morning. He dealt another hand without judgment, maintaining the same steady rhythm that had carried me through the winning streak hours earlier. That I looked around the casino floor. The penny slot couple was gone. Most of the other blackjack tables had emptied out. Even the die-hard poker players were cashing in their chips and heading for the parking lot. My phone showed 1:15 a.m. Sarah had been asleep for over an hour, trusting that I was working late to help our family catch up on bills. Instead, I was down to my last few hands, playing with money we needed to keep the electricity on. The cocktail waitress, Linda, according to her name tag, appeared at my elbow. Another coffee? Please. Black. She brought it in a white ceramic mug that was too hot to hold comfortably. The coffee tasted burnt, like it had been sitting on the warmer too long. I drank it anyway, hoping the caffeine would sharpen my focus. Mike dealt another hand. I got 16 against his face card. The decision tree was simple. Hit and risk busting, or stand and hope he'd bust instead. Basic strategy said hit. I tapped the felt .6 of hearts. 22. Bust. Sorry, Mike said, collecting my chips, down to $35. Maybe 7 more hands at the minimum bet, depending on what I had in white chips. Not enough to matter. Not enough to solve anything. That I reached for my wallet and felt the credit card Sarah and I had sworn we'd never touch except for real emergencies. This felt like a real emergency. The ATM rejected my debit card. Insufficient funds. The screen displayed the message in clinical white letters that somehow made the words worse. I tried again, thinking maybe I'd entered the wrong PIN, but got the same result. $247.63 remaining. Not enough for another withdrawal. I pulled out the Visa card we kept for emergencies. Medical emergencies, specifically. The kind of crisis that required immediate cash and couldn't wait for payday. Sarah and I had agreed on this rule back when Lily first got sick. The credit card was for life or death situations only. This felt like life or death. Maybe not in the literal sense, but close enough. Without the electric bill, we'd lose power. Without power, we'd lose the house. Without the house, we'd lose everything we'd built since Lily was born. I slid the card into the ATM and selected cash advance. The machine asked how much I wanted. Maximum daily limit was $500. I took it all. The transaction fee was $25. The interest rate was 24.9% annually, compounded daily. I'd read the fine print when we opened the account, but those numbers felt abstract then. Now they felt like weights around my neck. $500 and 20s came out of the machine with the same mechanical precision as before. I folded them into my wallet and walked back through the casino, past the empty poker tables and the lone slot players feeding coins into machines that flashed and chimed in the dark. Families used to come here together. I passed a group of 20-somethings sharing drinks and laughing at the roulette wheel, playing $5 bets and treating the whole thing like expensive entertainment. They looked happy, carefree, like people who could afford to lose what they were risking. Back again, Mike said when I returned to the table. Ready to mount a comeback? Something like that. I converted the 500 into chips, 20 red 25s. A much bigger stack than I'd started with, but somehow it felt smaller, heavier. These weren't just chips anymore. They were Lily's school clothes and Sarah's gas money, and the cushion that kept us from falling off the edge entirely. A new player had joined the table. While I was gone, a woman about my age with confident posture and quick hands. She introduced herself as Angela, said she bartended downtown and was just getting off a late shift. Rough night, she asked, nodding at my chip stack. Getting better. That's the spirit. Sometimes you gotta lose a little to win a lot. Angela played aggressively, betting $50 and $100 per hand like it was nothing. She won consistently, too, hitting 21, doubling down successfully, splitting pairs that turned into winners. Her chip stack grew while mine continued to shrink. "You been playing long?" she asked during a shuffle. "Few hours. You, off and on for years. Used to come here with my ex-husband. He couldn't quit when he was ahead." She arranged her chips in neat stacks. "That's the trick, you know? Knowing when to walk away. I bet $100 on the next hand. More than I'd ever risked on a single deal. Got dealt 19 against Mike's, showing 8. Good hand. Strong hand. Should have been a winner." Mike flipped his whole card. 3 for 11. Then pulled a 10 for 21. "Dealer 21. Mike announced, collecting chips from around the table. Angela shrugged and reloaded for the next hand. I stared at the empty spot where my chips used to be, calculating how much I'd just lost in 30 seconds. $500 from the credit card, minus 25 for the fee, minus 100 for the last hand. Down to $375 in less than an hour. Time was running out. The cards were running out. Everything was running out except my ability to make things worse. Angela brought energy to the table that had been missing all night. She chatted with Mike about downtown bars and late-night crowds. Ordered whiskey neat from Linda, the cocktail waitress, and played with the kind of confidence that came from years of experience. "You're pressing pretty hard," she said after I lost another $100 hand. "Trying to get even?" "Something like that. Been there. We all have." She hit blackjack on a $50 bet and collected her chips with practiced ease. Trick is knowing when you're chasing. I wanted to tell her I wasn't chasing, that I had a plan, a target, a mathematical approach based on proven strategy. But the words felt hollow even in my head. My chip stack was down to $200, and every bet felt like desperation wearing a thin disguise. Mike dealt another hand. I got 16 against his showing face card. The worst possible situation in blackjack. Too high to be safe, too low to stand with confidence. Basic strategy said hit. But basic strategy had been failing me all night that I tapped the felt anyway. 8 of clubs. 24. Bust. "Sorry," Mike said, collecting my chips with professional sympathy. Angela watched me lose with what might have been concern. "You okay? Want to take a break?" "I'm fine." But I wasn't fine. Down to $125 now, betting 50 per hand, watching the math spiral away from any reasonable hope of recovery. The electric bill was $180. Even if I won every hand from here out, I'd barely break even for the night. That MY phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Final notice. Account past due. Call immediately." Another bill collector. Another reminder of how far behind we'd fallen and how little tonight's gambling had accomplished. I put the phone away without responding. "Last call for drinks," Linda announced, making her rounds with a tired smile. The casino was emptying out. Other tables had closed. Even the poker room was winding down. Angela and I were among the last players on the floor, chasing dreams that felt smaller and more desperate with each passing hand. "I should probably cash out," Angela said, counting her chips. "Up about 200 for the night." "Smart move. You sure you don't want to quit while you can still catch a cab home?" I looked at my remaining chips. 7 red 25s and a handful of white ones. Maybe 3 more hands at my current betting level. The credit card was maxed out. My checking account was empty. This was it. Whatever happened in the next 10 minutes would determine whether I went home with something or nothing. "Just a few more hands," I said. Angela gathered her chips and headed for the cashier's cage. "Good luck," she called over her shoulder. Know when to quit. Too late for that advice. I was past the point of quitting, past the point of rational decision-making. The only way out was through, and through meant risking everything on the next card, the next hand, the next impossible chance to break even. Mike shuffled fresh cards and looked at me across the empty table. Just the two of us now, dealer and player, predator and prey, or maybe just two people doing jobs that had gotten more complicated than either of us wanted. "How much you want to bet?" He asked that I pushed all my chips forward. Everything left. One final hand to determine whether I'd drive home with something to show for the worst night of my life. "All of it," I said. Mike nodded and dealt the cards. Mike dealt the cards with the same steady rhythm he'd maintained all night. But something felt different now. The weight of silence. The empty chairs around us. The knowledge that this hand would determine whether I drove home with anything left or called Sarah from the casino parking lot to explain why our checking account was empty. My cards came face up. 10 of diamonds. 6 of spades. 16 against Mike's showing king of hearts. The worst possible hand in blackjack. Again, basic strategy was clear. Hit the 16. Take another card and hope for something 5 or under. The math was unforgiving. I'd bust 61% of the time. But standing on 16 against a face card was almost guaranteed suicide. I looked at my cards. Then at Mike's up card. Then at the empty spot where my chip stack used to be. Hours of careful play had led to this moment. All the strategy books I'd read during Lily's hospital stays. All the practice hands I'd dealt myself at the kitchen table. All the mathematical certainty I'd carried into the casino like armor. None of it mattered now. Hit or stand? Mike asked gently. I tapped the felt twice. Hit me. The card came off the deck in slow motion, spinning once before landing face up on the green felt. 8 of clubs. 24. Bust. I'm sorry, Mike said, collecting my last chips with the same professional sympathy he'd shown all night. I stared at that last message for a long time, thinking about my daughter's smile and the way she still hugged me every morning before school, even though she was getting too old for that kind of thing. On her roll again. While I was losing our electricity money at a blackjack table, she was excelling at math problems that had actual solutions. I drove home and found Lily at the kitchen table doing homework. Her backpack and folders spread out like she was conducting important business. She looked up when I walked in, those serious eyes taking in my appearance with the kind of attention kids paid when something felt different. Dad, are you sick? You look tired. Just a rough day at work, sweetheart. How was school? Good. Mrs. Henderson said I made honor roll again. Do you want to see my math homework? I sat down next to her and helped her work through long division problems, the same patient process we'd gone through the night before. But this time felt different. This time I was fully present, focused on each step, each remainder, each small victory as she mastered concepts that had seemed impossible an hour earlier. There, she said, erasing a mistake and writing the correct answer. 47. Perfect. You're getting really good at this. Will you help me with my science project this weekend? The crystal one. Of course. We'll go to the store and get everything you need. She finished her homework while I made dinner, grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, the kind of simple meal that felt like exactly what both of us needed. We ate together at the kitchen table, and she told me about her day with the kind of detail that reminded me why being a father was the most important job I'd ever had. Is Mommy working late again? She asked. She's helping people who need extra care tonight. She works a lot now. She does. But that's because she cares about people, just like you care about doing well in school. After dinner, I helped Lily with her bath and read her 3 chapters of Charlotte's Web until her breathing got slow and even. The routine felt normal, familiar, like something that belonged to the person I wanted to be instead of the person I'd been 12 hours earlier. Sarah came home just after midnight, moving quietly through the house, probably expecting to find me asleep. Instead, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and the stack of bills I'd been avoiding for weeks. How did it go today? She asked, sitting down across from me. 3 banks, 3 rejections. But I expected that. Did you call Danny? Not yet. I keep picking up the phone and putting it down. Sarah poured herself coffee and looked at the bills spread between us. Medical expenses, mortgage statements, utility notices, all the paper evidence of a life that had gotten more complicated than we'd planned for. He'll understand, she said. He's family. He's been helping us since Lily got sick. This feels different. Because it is different. But that doesn't mean he won't help. We sat together in the quiet kitchen, surrounded by the normal sounds of a house at night, the refrigerator humming, the heater clicking on, the soft whisper of wind through the trees outside. Normal sounds from a normal life that we were still living, despite everything I'd done to jeopardize it. I keep thinking about what you said, I told her, about knowing when to quit. When did I say that? Not you. Someone at the casino. A woman named Angela. She said the trick was knowing when to walk away. Sarah was quiet for a moment, probably wondering how many other people knew details about my gambling that she was just learning. How many strangers had watched me make decisions that affected our family. So what's the trick? She asked. I don't know. Maybe there isn't one. Maybe you just have to stop, period. No strategy, no perfect timing. Just stop. I picked up my phone and dialed Danny's number before I could change my mind. It rang 4 times before he answered, his voice groggy with sleep and confusion about why I was calling at midnight. William? What's wrong now? Did the plumber mess something up? Danny, I need to tell you the truth about the money you sent. Sarah listened while I explained everything to my brother. The casino, the losses, the lies I'd told to cover what I'd done. Danny was quiet through most of it, asking only a few questions about timeline and amounts. So you're banned now, he said when I finished. Lifetime ban. I can never go back. Good. That's the best thing that could have happened. We worked out a payment plan that would take 6 months, but wouldn't bankrupt either of us. Danny was disappointed but not angry, more concerned about whether I was getting help than whether he'd get his money back. You think this is over? He asked before we hung up. I think it has to be. That's not the same thing. After the call, Sarah and I sat at the table until almost 2 a.m., talking through the practical details of climbing out of the hole I'd dug. It would take time and extra shifts and careful budgeting, but it was possible. More than possible if we worked together. Tomorrow's a new day, Sarah said when we finally headed upstairs to in our bedroom. I checked on Lily one more time through her open door. She was sleeping peacefully, one arm wrapped around her stuffed elephant, still dreaming about Crystal, formations and science fair projects, and all the possibilities that came with being 9 years old and smart and loved. The casino felt like something that had happened to someone else. The cards and chips and desperate calculations belonged to a different William Prescott, one who'd confused gambling with solving problems. This William Prescott, the one standing in his daughter's doorway at 2 a.m., watching her sleep, had real work to do. Starting tomorrow, we'd figure it out. One day at a time, one bill at a time, one honest conversation at a time. Not because we had to, but because we could. Because some problems really did have solutions. And the best ones didn't require betting everything you couldn't afford to lose. That I closed Lily's door softly and went to bed next to my wife. Ready to sleep, the kind of sleep that came after telling the truth about the worst night of your life. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, for the first time in months, I knew exactly where I stood, and it was solid ground. The empty space in front of me, where $1,500 had disappeared over the course of 6 hours. My original stake, the money from checking, the credit card advance, all of it gone. The electric bill was still due. The mortgage was still 3 months behind. Lily still needed lunch money, and Sarah still needed gas to get to work. All I'd accomplished was making everything worse. That's a tough break, Mike said. You play good cards. Sometimes they just don't fall your way. I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. The casino floor around us hummed with the last few diehard players feeding coins into slot machines and placing final bets at other tables. Normal people with normal limits who'd go home to normal lives and normal sleep. You okay? Mike asked, and I nodded, though I wasn't sure it was true. My hands shook as I reached for my wallet, checking for bills I knew weren't there. 3 singles and some loose change. Not enough for gas to get home, let alone anything useful. Angela passed by on her way to the exit, counting her winnings. She paused at my table and must have seen something in my face that made her stop. Hey, she said softly. You need a ride somewhere? Cup of coffee. I'm fine. You sure? You look like you've seen a ghost. Maybe I had. The ghost of financial security. The ghost of being the kind of father who solved problems instead of creating them. The ghost of the man Sarah married, who used to come home from work with stories about concrete and rebar instead of lies about overtime. Thanks, but I'm okay, I said. Angela nodded and walked away, her heels clicking on the casino's carpet. Mike began cleaning up the table, stacking in used cards, and wiping down the felt. His shift was ending too. Soon it would just be me and the late-night slot players and the security guards who watched everything from hidden cameras. That I stood up from the table on unsteady legs and walked toward the casino's entrance. The parking lot was mostly empty now, just a handful of cars under the fluorescent lights. Mine was parked next to the Buick with the "World's Greatest Grandpa" sticker. The irony wasn't lost on me that I sat in my truck for a long time, engine off, staring at my phone. 2 missed calls from Danny, my brother in Phoenix. He always stayed up late, usually watching old movies or reading construction manuals. Sometimes he called just to check in, especially since Lily got sick. Maybe he'd understand. Maybe he'd help that I dialed his number before I could talk myself out of it. Danny answered on the second ring, his voice scratchy with late-night television and whatever he'd been drinking since dinner. William? Jesus, it's almost 2 in the morning. Everything okay? I paced around my truck in the casino parking lot, trying to find words that wouldn't sound like what they were. The security guard by the entrance watched me through the glass doors, probably wondering if I was having some kind of breakdown. "Hey, Danny. Sorry to call so late. I'm having an emergency." "What kind of emergency? Is Lily okay?" "Sarah, they're fine. It's the house. The water heater went out completely, flooded the basement. I need to get a plumber out here first thing in the morning, or we're looking at serious damage." The lie came easier than I expected. Specific details, urgent timeline, reasonable explanation for needing cash in the middle of the night. I'd gotten good at lying recently, though I'd never noticed it happening. "Shit. How much we talking?" "400 would cover it. Maybe a little less, but I want to be safe." Danny was quiet for a moment, and I could hear the television in the background, some old western with gunshots and horses. He'd helped us before when Lily was in the hospital, wiring money for medical bills when our credit cards maxed out and the insurance company delayed payments. "You try calling a regular plumber? Most of them work emergency hours. It's the middle of the night. Danny, everyone wants double rates, and I don't have that kind of cash sitting around. What about your emergency fund?" We'd never had an emergency fund. Every dollar went to bills or groceries or gas to get to work. The only emergency fund we'd ever had was the credit card, and I'd blown through that tonight chasing losses at Mike's table. Used it on Lily's last checkup. Insurance didn't cover everything they said it would. Another lie, but close enough to the truth that it felt justified. We did struggle with medical bills. The insurance company did deny claims regularly. I just hadn't used the credit card for medical expenses tonight. "Okay," Danny said finally. "I can wire it in the morning. Western Union opens at 8, right?" "Actually, the casino has a Western Union counter. It's open all night." I paused, realizing my mistake. "I mean, there's one at the gas station by the highway. They stay open late." If Danny caught the slip, he didn't mention it. "You sure 400's enough?" "Yeah, that'll cover it. And you'll pay me back from Friday's check." "Absolutely." First thing. We talked for a few more minutes about work and weather and normal brother things that felt strange after what I'd just asked him to do. Danny had his own bills, his own struggles. Construction work in Phoenix was steady but not easy, and he'd been helping Mom with her medical expenses since Dad died. "I'll send it as soon as Western Union opens," he said. "Take care of yourself, okay? You sound stressed." "Just tired. Long day. Get some sleep. And call me this weekend. We haven't talked in a while." "I will. Thanks, Danny. I owe you." Family doesn't owe family. Just take care of that little girl. The line went dead, and I stood in the parking lot holding my phone, staring at the casino's neon sign reflected in the windshields of empty cars. Danny would send the money because he trusted me, because I was his older brother, the responsible one who'd helped him through his divorce and his construction accident and all the small crises that life threw at both of us. Now I was lying to him to fund gambling losses I couldn't explain. The security guard was still watching me through the glass. Other late-night players came and went, some celebrating modest wins, others walking to their cars with the same hollow expression I probably wore. I recognized the look now, the face of someone who'd lost more than they could afford and had to figure out how to live with it. But I wasn't done yet. Danny's money would take 20 minutes to process. 20 minutes to figure out how to turn $400 into enough to matter. Enough to cover what I'd lost. Enough to make this whole night feel like something other than the worst mistake of my life. That I walked back through the casino's sliding doors, past the security guard who nodded like he'd seen this before. The Western Union counter sat in a corner of the casino near the gift shop, manned by a clerk who looked like he'd processed 1,000 desperate transactions during late-night shifts. He barely glanced up when I approached. Just asked for my ID and Danny's confirmation number with the tired efficiency of someone who'd seen this exact scenario play out countless times. Two other people waited in line ahead of me. A woman in her 50s clutching a crumpled piece of paper with numbers written in shaky handwriting. A younger guy in a Lakers jersey who kept checking his phone and muttering under his breath. Both had the same hollow look I'd seen in my truck's rearview mirror. Next, the clerk called. The woman stepped forward and slid her ID through the window. "I'm here to pick up money from my daughter." She signed papers with hands that shook slightly, accepted $420.20, and walked back toward the slot machines without looking at anyone. Her daughter was probably asleep somewhere, trusting that Mom would use the money for groceries or rent or whatever emergency had necessitated a 2 a.m. cash transfer, just like Danny trusted me. Next, the Lakers fan collected $300, counted it twice, and headed straight for the poker room. At least he was honest about what the money was for. Next, I slid my driver's license through the window and gave the clerk Danny's confirmation number. He typed it into his computer with two-finger precision, squinting at the screen through glasses that needed cleaning. William Prescott. That's me. $400 from Daniel Prescott in Phoenix. ID verification complete. He counted out 2020s and slid them through the window along with a receipt. Sign here. I signed my name on a form I didn't read and took the money. Fresh bills that smelled like the bank where Danny had withdrawn them, carrying the trust of a brother who thought he was helping me fix a water heater emergency. Thank you, I said. The clerk was already looking past me to the next customer. Just another transaction on a Tuesday night that had blended into Wednesday morning. Nothing personal, nothing memorable. Just money changing hands for reasons he didn't need to know. That I walked back through the casino with $400 in my pocket and a receipt that proved I'd sunk to a level I hadn't known existed. The slot machines chimed and flashed around me, filled with people who looked happy to be there. Couples sharing drinks and celebrating small wins. Groups of friends laughing at video poker screens. Normal people having normal fun with money they could afford to lose. Mike was still dealing at my table, though he'd been joined by two new players, a middle-aged man in a suit and a woman about Sarah's age who played with surgical precision. They looked up when I approached, probably recognizing me as the guy who'd lost everything an hour earlier. "Welcome back," Mike said without surprise. "Ready for round two?" Something like that. I converted Danny's 400 into chips, trying not to think about what the money represented. My brother's trust, his own financial struggles in Phoenix, the favors I'd owe and the stories I'd have to remember to keep the lie consistent. "Fresh start," the woman said encouragingly. "Sometimes you need to walk away and come back with a clear head." If only she knew how unclear my head had become. How far I'd traveled from the careful, strategic player who'd sat down 6 hours earlier with a reasonable plan and modest goals. That William Prescott felt like a different person entirely. Mike shuffled fresh cards and looked around the table. "Everyone ready?" The man in the suit nodded. The woman arranged her chips in neat stacks. I took a deep breath and tried to remember what basic strategy looked like when you weren't drowning. "Deal them," I said, with Danny's money converted to chips. I felt something I hadn't experienced all night. Genuine hope. $400 represented a real chance at recovery. Not enough to solve everything, but enough to matter. Enough to turn the worst night of my life into just a bad night with a decent ending. I started conservative, $25 bets. Basic strategy, the careful approach that had worked earlier before everything went wrong. The man in the suit introduced himself as Robert, said he was in town for a medical conference. The woman, Patricia, dealt with insurance claims and played blackjack like she calculated odds for a living. "First rule," Patricia said after winning a hand with 20 against the dealer's 19. "Never chase losses with money you can't afford to lose." Too late for that advice, but I nodded like it was wisdom I planned to follow. Mike dealt another round, and I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the mirrored ceiling above the table. I looked like someone who'd been awake too long, making decisions that made sense only in the fluorescent twilight of a casino at 3 a.m. My first hand with Danny's money was blackjack. Ace of hearts, queen of spades. Natural 21 paid 3-2, turning my $25 bet into $62.50. Robert whistled appreciatively. "Good way to start a comeback," he said. I let the winnings ride. $62.50 on the next hand. Got dealt 20 against Mike's 18. Another winner. My chip stack grew to over $150 profit. For the first time all night, the math was working in my favor. "You're on fire," Patricia said. "Might want to lock up some of those winnings." Instead, I pushed everything forward. $150 on a single hand. More than I'd ever bet on anything in my life. But I could feel the momentum shifting. The cards were finally cooperating. The deck was correcting itself just like the book said it would. Mike dealt slowly, giving me time to change my mind. But I didn't want to change my mind. I wanted to press this streak until it broke, until I had enough to cover what I'd lost, and maybe even enough to matter. 21. Blackjack again. The table erupted in celebration. Robert clapped. Patricia shook her head in amazement. Mike smiled and pushed chips across the felt, enough to cover my original stake plus everything I'd borrowed from Danny. That I was ahead for the night. Actually ahead, for the first time since Frank cashed out hours earlier. Cash out, Patricia said firmly. Right now? Walk away while you're winning. She was right. I knew she was right. Every gambling book I'd ever read said the same thing. When you're ahead, especially when you're ahead after being behind, take the money and run. The house edge doesn't disappear just because you're on a streak, but I looked at my chip stack and did quick math in my head. I was up maybe $600 total. Enough to cover the electric bill, sure, but not enough to make a real dent in what we owed. Not enough to buy us more than a few weeks of breathing room. One more hand, I said. Then I'm done. Famous last words, though everyone at the table had probably heard them before. Mike shuffled fresh cards and waited for my bet. The clock on the wall read 3:47 a.m. Sarah would be deep asleep, dreaming whatever dreams nurses had after long shifts in places where people struggled to stay alive. That I pushed $600 forward. Everything I'd won, plus most of Danny's money. One hand to double up or lose it all. Robert and Patricia both tried to talk me out of it. Even Mike suggested maybe scaling back the bet size. But I'd come too far to play it safe now. Too far to walk away with just enough to cover one bill when we needed so much more. Last hand, I promised. Win or lose, I'm done after this. Mike dealt the cards with reluctant professionalism. I got 19, Jack of clubs, 9 of hearts. Solid hand against his showing 8. Strong enough to stand, weak enough to worry about. Mike flipped his whole card. 3 of diamonds for 11 total. He pulled the next card slowly, the way dealers do when they know everyone's watching. Point 10 of spades. 21. Dealer 21. Mike announced quietly. The chips disappeared faster than I could process what had happened. $600, gone in 30 seconds. Danny's money, my last chance. Everything I'd built during the brief comeback. Wiped out by one card that should have been anything but a 10. I stared at the empty space in front of me, trying to understand how I'd gotten here. How a careful plan had turned into this moment. Sitting at an empty table at 4 a.m. with nothing left to bet and no way to explain what I'd done. I'm sorry, Mike said, and I could tell he meant it. Patricia and Robert looked at me with the kind of sympathy reserved for people who'd just witnessed an accident. Which, I suppose, they had done. I reached across the table, not thinking, just reacting to the impossibility of losing everything again. My hand brushed against Mike's cards, trying to turn back time. Trying to undo the last 30 seconds of my life. Security was there before I'd even realized what I was doing. Sir, please step away from the table. 2 security guards appeared so quickly they must have been watching me for a while. Both were younger than me, built like former military, wearing the kind of cheap suits that meant business without looking threatening. They didn't grab me or shout or make a scene. Just positioned themselves on either side of my chair with professional calm. I wasn't. I started to say, but the words dried up. What wasn't I doing? Trying to touch the cards? Reaching across the table in desperation? Making the kind of scene that got people banned from casinos? It's okay, one of the guards said. His name tag read Stevens. Let's just take a walk and sort this out. Mike had stepped back from the table, cards in one hand, looking like he'd seen this before. Patricia and Robert gathered their chips quickly and found reasons to be somewhere else. Even in a casino at 4 a.m., there were limits to how much drama people wanted to witness. I'm sorry, I said to Mike. I wasn't trying to cheat or anything. I know, Mike said gently. These things happen. You had a rough night. Stevens placed a light hand on my shoulder. Mr. Prescott, we need you to come with us for a few minutes. Just routine paperwork. They knew my name. Of course they knew my name. The player's card I'd used all night, the ATM transactions, the Western Union pickup, everything I'd done had left a digital trail that led back to William Prescott. Construction foreman, father of 1, married to Sarah. Address on Maple Street. The walk to the security office felt longer than it probably was. We passed the last few slot players feeding coins into machines that flashed and chimed in the early morning silence. Past the empty poker room where chairs sat pushed under tables like a restaurant after closing time. Past the sports book where televisions played to empty seats. Normal people were home sleeping. Normal people with normal problems and normal ways of solving them. The security office was windowless and sterile, furnished with a metal desk, 2 chairs, and a camera that recorded everything from a corner mount. Stephen sat across from me while his partner stood by the door. Neither of them looked angry or threatening. Just tired professionals doing a job they'd done many times before. First time this has happened? Stevens asked, pulling out a clipboard with forms I couldn't read from my angle. Yes, I'm not a troublemaker. I just had a bad night. They happen, more often than you'd think. He clicked a pen and looked at me with what might have been sympathy. Problem is, state gaming regulations are pretty strict about physical contact with dealer equipment. Doesn't matter if you meant anything by it. I nodded, though I wasn't sure what I was agreeing to. Everything felt surreal, like watching someone else's life play out on a screen. This wasn't supposed to happen to me. I was the responsible one, the careful one, the guy who read instruction manuals and followed rules. Are you arresting me? No, nothing like that. But we do need to process some paperwork. Ban documentation, mostly. Ban. The word hit me like cold water. I'd never thought about what happened to people who got kicked out of casinos. Never considered that there was a formal process, paperwork, permanent records. How long? I asked. The ban? Lifetime. All properties in the network, which is most of the casinos in the state. Lifetime. I'd never be able to come back, never be able to try again, never be able to chase what I'd lost tonight or any other night. The escape valve I'd been using to manage stress and financial pressure was closing permanently. Maybe that was a good thing. Maybe that was the only way this could end. Stevens handed me a pen and slid the forms across the desk. Just need your signature acknowledging that you understand the terms. I signed without reading, my hand shaking enough that my signature looked like someone else's. Stevens collected the papers and stamped them with official finality. You need a ride somewhere? He asked. We can call a cab. I've got my truck. Okay, we'll walk you out. The casino looked different from the perspective of someone being escorted to the parking lot. Smaller somehow, less magical, just a business designed to separate people from their money. Decorated with lights and sounds that made losing feel like entertainment. My truck sat alone under a parking lot light, looking exactly like I'd left it 6 hours earlier. Same dent in the bumper from when Lily was learning to ride her bike. Same construction stickers on the back window. Same family that depended on me to make smart decisions. Take care of yourself, Stevens said, and maybe find a different way to unwind. I sat in the truck for a long time after they went back inside, staring at the casino's neon sign and trying to figure out how to drive home. Not the mechanics of it. I was sober, alert, capable of operating a vehicle. But how to go home and face what I'd done. Sarah would be asleep, trusting that I was working late to help our family catch up. Instead, I'd made everything worse. $1,500 worse, plus whatever interest the credit card charged, plus the lies I'd have to tell to cover it all up. I started the engine and drove toward Maple Street, toward my house, toward the conversation I'd have to have with my wife about the worst night of my life. Patricia Chen didn't look like someone who handled problem gamblers for a living. She was small, professional, maybe 45 years old with reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. She could have been a bank manager or an insurance agent or any other kind of person who dealt with paperwork and regulations as part of their daily routine. Mr. Prescott, she said, settling into the chair across from me in the windowless office. I'm Patricia, floor supervisor. I understand you had some contact with dealer equipment tonight. I didn't mean anything by it. I was just frustrated. I'm sure you were. Losing streaks are difficult. She opened a folder and pulled out forms I recognized from Stevens' clipboard. Unfortunately, state gaming commission regulations require us to document any physical contact with table games as a violation of gaming protocols. The language was clinical, bureaucratic, designed to remove emotion from what had happened. But I could hear the sympathy in her voice, the tone of someone who'd had this conversation many times with people who'd made similar mistakes. What does that mean exactly? It means you'll be banned from this property and all affiliated casinos in the network. The ban is permanent and applies to all gaming activities. She slid the document across the desk, pages of legal language designed to cover every scenario the casino's lawyers could imagine. My name sat at the top. If I sign this, I can never come back. That's correct. Attempting to return would be criminal trespassing. The words blurred. I'd been awake 20 hours and had just lost more money than I ever had. Can I appeal this? Talk to someone. The decision is final. Gaming Commission rules don't allow appeals in cases involving dealer contact, Patricia said gently. These rules protect both players and staff. I signed page after page, each signature closing a door I'd never open again. Not that I wanted to. The thought of another blackjack table made me sick. Will others know? My family. No. This ban is internal. But you might want to talk to someone, maybe a counselor. She handed me a card for the Nevada Council on Problem Gambling. I tucked it into my wallet beside maxed out cards. Your player's card is deactivated, she added. Comp points forfeited. You'll need alternative entertainment. Like this was a movie theater ban, not a wrecking ball through my family's fragile finances. Security walked me out. The casino was nearly empty. Slot players, janitors, guards. Tomorrow it would reset for new customers. Customers who wouldn't include me. I sat in my truck, staring at the neon lights. 6 hours had turned me from a construction foreman with money problems into a liar, a debtor, a man banned from every casino in Nevada. The drive home took 20 minutes. 20 minutes to figure out how to tell Sarah. The house was dark, porch light on, bedroom window glowing. 3:47 a.m. She thought I was working late at the Morrison site. I sat in the truck, paralyzed by shame. The mortgage was 3 months behind, the electric bill due, hospital debt hanging over us, and I'd just added $1,500 more. The door opened. Sarah stood in her robe, silhouetted by the hallway light. William? What are you doing? Just thinking. It's almost 4. I was worried sick. Her relief shifted into confusion and concern as I approached. You look awful. We need to talk. At the kitchen table she waited, silent, as I confessed. I hadn't been working late. I'd been at the riverside, gambling for months. Tonight, I'd lost everything. Checking, credit card, and money borrowed from my brother Danny under false pretenses. $1,500? She whispered. We don't have that. I know. The credit card was for emergencies. I know. She pieced it together. My lies, the timeline, the betrayal. How long? A few months. It started small. But then, it became $1,500 in one night. We sat in silence, her hands folded, calculating debts and extra shifts. Finally, she asked, Are you going to keep going? I can't. They banned me tonight. Lifetime. I explained the incident, the signatures. Confessing felt like describing someone else's crimes. So that's it? You're done. I'm done. She stood, poured a glass of water, and stared out the window. We'll have to call Danny tomorrow. Work out payments. And the credit card company. We'll see if they'll lower the rate. She searched for a word to describe this. Emergency didn't fit. Investment didn't fit. Mistake felt too small, since this was a one-time thing. She finished it. I wanted to promise it was. But promises felt cheap. I'm sorry, I said. I know. Are you going to leave me? She finally looked at me. Her face carried exhaustion born of loving someone who'd made terrible choices. We'll figure it out, she said. We always do. Those words had carried us through Lily's illness and endless bills. Now they'd have to carry us through this. Tomorrow would bring explanations and rebuilding trust. Tonight, we went upstairs together, checking on Lily, sleeping peacefully, clutching her stuffed elephant, dreaming of normal 9-year-old things worth protecting. The next morning, Sarah left for an extra shift, kissing me without words. I called in sick for the first time in years, my voice flat with shame. The world felt sharper now. Bills looked heavier. Even coffee tasted bitter. 3 banks rejected me for loans. Credit cards were maxed. Debt to income too high. Counselors suggested credit counseling. Sitting in my truck, I checked my phone. A text from Jerry at work, one from Sarah saying she'd be late, and one from Lily's school. Congratulations. Lily Prescott made honor roll again. I stared at the message, torn between pride in her and despair at myself.